Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to Wasteland Talks, my weekly talks show where I talk about whatever the hell I want. And this week, it's another month, so we have another album analysis, and we got Alex and Jim back on the show. Thank you guys for coming on.
Yeah.
You're welcome, Shane. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Thanks.
And this time, it's my pick, and I was tempted to pick another album also called Moving Pictures, but from Dire Straits. So I decided to just pick Brothers in Arms instead. And to give a little bit of background, and I'll let you both give a little bit of perspective on how you came about, like Dire Straits and Mark Knopfler and this album. But I've been a huge fan of Dire Straits for a long time. I think ever since I heard the song Sultan's Swing, I was sold. I'm just like, this band's great. I love this. And their most popular album is Brothers in Arms. It was a big hit in the 80s. I used to watch VH1 Classic when they still actually talked about music. And they used to have retro music videos and the Money for Nothing music video with the clunky robotic animation, a bunch of hardware store people. And neon flashing headbands and stuff like that really struck a chord on MTV. And I've been a huge fan of Mark Knopfler in general because this was actually their second to last album. They released one last album like late 80s, early 90s, and then he went solo and really dove into folk music. I've been a big fan of his collaborations with James Taylor and Emmylou Harris. And you know, he also wrote the score for Princess Bride and performed the guitar.
Oh, damn. That's crazy.
So Mark Knopfler did a lot of great finger picking because he is known for that because he did not use a pick playing his music. And he has a very distinct sound to how he plays his guitar. Wow. But I was excited to talk about this album because I also think this album has an interesting variety to it in terms of sound and style, because like obviously you have like very like calmer kind of like somber music. You have some very jazzy whipping out that saxophone, and then of course you have something rocking like Money for Nothing. But Alex, how did you come about Dire Straits?
Well, the only song I ever really heard was Money for Nothing, and I want my MTV, and Sting, that's kind of all I knew. And so this is my first introduction to their band. I heard when we were hanging out with Matt once, you mentioned how much you loved them and might've played some stuff in the car, but it kind of went in one ear and went out the other. And I mean, so that's how I kind of came to it. I always remember that video growing up. But there's a lot that I don't know about the lyrics, although in reading some of them, I could see there's a lot of depth in there, especially, some of the stuff about war, and I'm like, oh, wow. There's a lot of stuff in here I don't know about. I really have to read up more on, but you'll hear me talk more about the instrumentation. It's the guitar tones on here are beautiful. There's some really beautiful instrumentation here. It's always a little weird for me when you combine like a lot of electronic drums with electric guitar and piano and saxophone. So you're combining like electronic stuff with this other stuff that we kind of, I don't know, accept as more authentic. It's always a little odd. So you'll probably hear me talk a little bit about that, but I like some of it. It reminds me of a few different artists and of that day. And, but some of the instrumentation, not just in the guitars, but in the keyboards is really, really, really cool.
Awesome. How about you, Jim?
I told my colleague we were doing this discussion, and he was like, oh, Brothers in Arms, what a great album. But I'll be honest, the first listen was a challenge, mostly because of the tonal palette. It's so it's so 80s.
Yeah.
Like this might be the most 80s record I've ever heard. I was aware of Mark Knopfler growing up. Sultans of Swing was like, how to describe it? It's like something that as a young guitarist, it really impresses you, you know, the song. And it was all over rock radio. Yeah. So I don't know that I put that Dire Straits together with 80s Dire Straits until I was an adult, until I was ready to listen to more adult contemporary music. Yeah. I do remember there was a guitar book I'd received as a gift, and it just covered everything. It was like guitarists and how the guitar gets put together and how to change your strings. And for each guitarist they featured in the book, they gave like a little featurette of one of their techniques. And I remember the Cascade. I never learned how to play it, but I remember that Knopfler's like claim to fame in that book was the Cascade, the finger style, like the way he kind of, I guess it's kind of self-explanatory, right? The way he cascades down the scale using his fingers to pick. That's probably the easiest entryway for me into the band. I really liked their first two albums. And I think, guys, I'm the only one of us that hasn't seen the music video. Oh. Can you, if there's anybody out there, could you describe it to me in like a sentence?
So like, I'm going to show you one still from it. Okay. And I feel like this could definitely give you a perspective on what they're going for with it. So money, come on. Money for nothing. Music video. So like, there it is. Like this is like a hardware store guy that's really blocky animation.
So he's actually moving. He's actually selling microwaves and color TVs. The lead character of this song. Yes.
So yes. So Money for Nothing, from what I understand, he was actually in a hardware store. And a lot of the lyrics in this song were direct quotes from a blue collar worker who was like looking at this TV and like reacting to 80s MTV kind of thing. Like, you know, obviously he uses some choice words to describe one of the people that he talks about it, which if you listen to this on the radio, they completely cut that section of the song out.
I'm gonna say I never heard that before. Yeah.
And it's that section because it's like your blue collar kind of worker looking at these like 80s male performers with like eyeliner on and hairsprayed hair and stuff like that. And, you know, that's his reaction. And those are the choice words he decides to use to describe them.
Kind of like an older person watching like a K-pop star these days, right? Like maybe a dangly earring, right? Different color hair. That's it. I didn't know that. So I could tell that it was satirical. The way he was using this particular slur was satirical, but I didn't know that he was taking those words directly out of somebody's mouth. So that actually makes the song more interesting to me knowing that. Oh, trivia fact. This was the first video to play on MTV Britain.
Mm-hmm. MTV what?
Yeah. MTV, like, I guess it was America's thing, right? So they launched an MTV in the UK, and that was the first video they played.
Because Dire Straits is very much a Scottish band. So very UK. And it's interesting because, like, I'm a huge fan of Dire Straits, and I was on a kick earlier this year where I was going through some of my favorite artists and just listening to all their albums and just seeing how they evolve. And Jim, you're very much correct that this is like them jumping headlong into like the 1980s.
It's so different from their sound like in the 70s. So different.
Mm-hmm. It's very much like ZZ Top, where it's just like 70s ZZ Top is like blues rock. And then you get to 80s and you have like Sharp Dressed Man and Give Me All Your Lovin'. And, you know, especially like Rough Boy, which is like the most 80s ZZ Top song. It's it's a very interesting shift and a fun little fact. So they were recording this in the same place that Sting was vacationing, which is how they got Sting to do the voices, some of that like vocal work on Money for Nothing.
Yeah, which as usual, he sounds amazing. You know, he's amazing.
And then he did it again at Live Aid when they performed this at Live Aid, because like they were both there, right. Dire Straits and Sting. So, because the thing is, it's like you have a lot of their like big, so like So Far Away, Money for Nothing, Walk of Life, Your Latest Trick, and Brothers in Arms are all like pretty big songs. And they're all very different songs.
Right.
And like, especially Brothers in Arms is like a very haunting song to end this album on at like 7 minutes. And just this, it has such an interesting music scape. Like, it just feels like you're being surrounded in a very specific sound. Yeah. And it's not like big riffs like Money for Nothing is. Because, like, I feel like Money for Nothing is, like, the most, like, rock song on this album with, like, the big riffs and stuff like that. And Your Latest Trick, rip it in there with that saxophone. Which they, like, that's the thing, because Mark Knopfler, I feel like, had a lot of different ideas and different kinds of taste of music. And it took him flying solo to just be like, well, I'm going to try all these other things besides rock music. And kind of did his own thing, and wouldn't be the first. Richie Blackmore has a Renaissance band from Deep Purple. Like, he has Blackmore's Night, and they do like Renaissance music and stuff like that.
That's very cool. Blackmore's Night. I'll have to check that out for sure.
Yeah,
I haven't been to the Renaissance Fair in years, man.
They have a song.
I love that stuff.
Yeah,
for about 15 minutes.
Like, I'm good. I got a couple songs in. I'm good. I'm gone.
It's like Celtic music. It's like, oh, nice. All right, I'm done.
I get that. Yeah, Celtic rock is not. It makes me feel nothing.
You know what's funny is I'm really into like Irish music and like Celtic music and stuff like that. And like, I have appreciation for a lot of like Irish bands and Scottish bands. I'll argue with anybody. Thin Lizzy is the top Irish rock band. Sorry, you too.
I never knew Thin Lizzy was Irish. It's a very it's a hot take there, Shane. Hot take.
It sure is, because everybody's like, top Irish band. It's Bono. And it's
it occurred to me, yeah, you too. It occurred to me just as you were talking that the intro to that Police song about the creature at the bottom of the lock. What's that song called?
I don't know what Police song you're talking about.
The introduction to Shiny Metal Boxes. Is that what the song's called?
I have to look into that. All I thought it was Loch Lomond.
It's a radio hit for sure. And it mentions something being at the bottom of a dark Scottish lake or a dark Scottish loch. And the intro actually resembles the intro to Money for Nothing, like a little. So I wonder if those were being worked on around the same time.
On the drums, you mean? Or
no, it's like the synthesizers and the kind of ethereal vocals that are echoing back and forth before the drums come in.
Okay. Oh, I see what you mean.
Because it goes like, it's like, and then you come in with that riff coming in from Mark Knopfler, and they're like, oh, we're ready. We're going to rock it out.
I love that intro, by the way.
Oh, and I love listening to the actual album version of this, because it just milks it. Just brings it all in and really builds up to that. Because that's such a great intro to the song, and you have that, like, it's coming, and then the wah, 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 and just coming in with the riff, and just like grabs it.
It's interesting you say. So I wonder. So he's finger picking on that song too, because that makes sense. Because whatever I don't know what that effect is on his guitar, but I don't know if I've ever heard a guitar sound quite like that. It definitely doesn't sound like it's being strummed, you know. It sounds like a synthesizer, but it's still too trebly to be a synthesizer, right? Like it still sounds like a guitar, but it's like it's going through something else. Obviously, it's being filtered through something else.
And like, as an acoustic player, I follow you, Alex, and I have no idea how to describe. Like, I knew that was a guitar listening to it, but I don't know how to describe to you how I knew that was a guitar.
Yeah.
Sorry, Shane.
Right. Well, it's one of those things. It's a feel, right? Like in the way it sounds, there's something about it that feels more rhythmic than you can accomplish with the synthesizer.
That's actually that's a good point. Yeah. It's really hard to get that kind of a percussive slap. Like just cutting the notes on a synthesizer. Yeah.
Right. It's to the synthesizer. It's almost too warm. Honestly, it's too warm. It's too rounded out, right? The sound is the notes are it's too rounded out. The guitar, that's the guitar is, it's edgy. It's got an edgy sound. So, and that's what I said, that we could probably talk about that guitar too. Probably look up. There's probably videos, and people have probably researched like how he accomplished that, because it really is kind of, I've never heard anything like that, before. And that's what stood out about when you say Dire Straits. I would just think about the riff, like not even the song, just that riff. So, it just stands out.
It's I think one of the things I love about Mark Knopfler so much is he has a very distinct sound to it, and I always like his obviously their earlier albums have a lot more of like a bluesy kind of sound and much more like a clean rock kind of sound, versus like obviously a lot of these songs are filled with all kinds of different instruments and different kinds of sounds, and like some of them feel very, very soft and tender, like some of these songs, and it's just like, well, that's out of nowhere.
I have to talk about Ride Across the River, and because so first thing I have to say is they use something that, whatever that instrument is, it's a synthesizer, but it's imitating what sounds like some sort of pan flute. Which, by the way, if your volume's not up enough, you don't hear that. I tried listening to it, you barely hear it, but if you listen to it through headphones, like you hear it like much better. They use that in intros to a lot of different songs, one of which being Peter Gabriel's Sledgehammer. They use
I love that song.
But the higher pitch, it's like a higher pitch. They use it. They like whatever that sampled that sampled sound effect is. They use a higher pitch of it, and then it goes low. And then, of course, the first song I thought of was Hip Hop Hooray by Naughty by Nature, because they used what sounded like the exact same intro for Hip Hop Hooray from this song, from Right Across the River, but it was a little bit louder. I remember because the video for Hip Hop Hooray, it was pretty loud, and then, Hip Hop Hooray is just like rainbow sprinkles for your ears, whether you like hip hop or not. That's a catchy freaking song. But I just, the rest of that song actually reminded me, you'll remind me of the composer, the score from Rain Man.
Was it Danny Elfman? Did Danny Elfman do Rain Man?
Not Elfman. It was, he also did Dark Knight later on.
Oh, Hans Zimmer.
Hans Zimmer. It reminded me of a Hans Zimmer score.
Well, that's the thing, because like Mark Knopfler wound up doing scores and stuff like that, and experiment, like the same way you listen. If you're watching the movie, say Lethal Weapon, 100% that's Eric Clapton playing the guitar on the soundtrack to that movie, because it just sounds like Eric Clapton.
I didn't know that.
Next time you watch Lethal Weapon, you'll hear it like that. The second Mark Knopfler did the score to Princess Bride and you listen to it again, just like the acoustic guitar playing sounds just like him. And it's that very tender kind of like soothing kind of playing, because you know, like you have some very, like I mentioned, tender songs like Why Worry is just such a soft song on this album, and it just sets this, and it's also the longest song on this album. It's 8.5 minutes. And it's interesting because
I like that song a lot.
Yeah, this is almost an hour long album, and it's only 9 songs.
Okay. Wow.
Walk of Life feels like the most like pop single throw on the radio song.
Definitely. Yeah. I appreciate that. Now knowing a little bit about what it's about, I was a busker for a period of time in my life. So I appreciate that song, knowing that it's about British buskers in the UK, you know, making references to songs that I don't even know anything about. But I was like, oh, okay. I'd like that. Makes me like the song more than I liked it originally.
Yeah, because apparently it got released as the B-side with So Far Away. So like they sold that as a record, the 2 of those songs.
Oh, I see. So Far Away was not a single, but it was released as an LP with Walk of Life.
Okay.
So Far Away to me is like really forgettable. I just thought it was really bland. So maybe they caught the same vibes and they just decided not to release it as a single. I don't really know. But Walk of Life to me is my favorite song on the album. I don't know what that says about me. Like it's the easiest for me to listen to, I think, just because I find the 80s stuff so challenging. When I heard Why Worry, I thought it should be a lullaby. I was like, this song should be acoustic and it should be a lullaby. That was my first thought.
The 80s thing is interesting. So 80s really does have its own sound, you know, I have to bring up John Mayer's last album, because when he was talking about it, and then I listened to it, I tried to listen to it a couple of times. It uses a lot of this instrumentation and it has a lot of that feel, and it doesn't like stick in you. And I think it's because like I can feel the board. Does that make sense? I can feel the wiring, if that makes any sense.
I thought you meant boredom, as in B-O-R-E.
No, not B-O-R-E-D. I meant B-O-A-R-D. I can feel the soundboard.
I got you.
You're like, tell us how you really feel, Alex. No, I can feel the inner workings of that technology, you know, and it's different. It's a different filter. It's a different, and so the 80s sound, it's funny because it can be so refreshing in some ways. Like I really like some of the synthesizer music I hear from Kavinsky, who did the opening song to Drive, the movie Drive. If you remember Night Call, like that song is amazing. Like, but if you listen to like that stuff, like his whole albums from like start to finish, like it doesn't, something like it's here. It never gets in here. Like it's one of those sonic things. Like it's always like trying to get into your skin, but it never gets into your heart. It never makes you want to cry. It never, you know what I mean? It never makes you think about an ex-girlfriend or something. It never makes you think about your mom or something. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't go for the gut. It goes for something. It's trying to get into something else. And I feel like the 80s, when you come out of the 70s where they were doing some of the greatest like analog recordings from the 70s, like Fleetwood Mac, like so like the drum sounds and some of the Fleetwood Mac stuff and the Tom Petty stuff and the Bruce Springsteen stuff, like Darkness on the Edge of Town, like the drums and the guitar sounds like they're in the freaking room with you. And you get into the 80s and it's like, nah, we're not in the room with you. We're over here. We're in LA. Listen to our shit. You know, like there, I don't know if they're in LA, but there definitely feels like now it's okay to be removed It's all right to be removed from like what's in here sonically. So sonically, it's a just very different experience. I thought of a couple different artists, one of which being Tom Petty's Full Moon Fever, because that album still has folk elements and poppy, catchy Tom Petty songwriting, but it's also kind of perfect, you know, whereas Wildflowers came out like 5-6 years later is kind of imperfect somehow, because that takes the folk acoustic piano horns route, whereas Full Moon Fever has this obvious like it's perfect. Like the album is perfect, and you either love that or maybe you don't, maybe you like it but you don't love it. And so that's the thing about these sounds and this instrumentation, is there's something, it sounds like it's perfect to me, especially those electric kit sounds. I struggle with the electric kits in anything, but I struggle with it on this album too, because I think it sounds like it's like maybe it's a mix, like a mix of acoustic and electric kits, but whatever that electric snare and electric hi-hats, like, son of a bitch, I don't like that. Like, that's just, I think we're just not used to it. I just doesn't get it into my bones. But I do appreciate it. Another artist, I know you said like he's a folk, like he became a folk singer, right? Yeah. And you said like this should have been a folk song, So Far Away. Like this reminds me of Leonard Cohen. Like some of his delivery and even some of his lyrics reminds me a little bit of some of the stuff you hear from Leonard Cohen. And Leonard Cohen did electric sounding stuff in the 2000s, some of which is like really, really good. And then others is just really, really forgettable, So
I hear more Dylan in Mark Knopfler than anything else. And I don't know. I think at this point, Dylan's career had started to go into decline. So I think it's interesting that
because at this point he
picked up his legacy,
Was this around the time he was doing like Traveling Wilburys with like
everybody
else?
I believe this was his Christian phase, I believe.
Oh, wow. Oh, I didn't know that. A Christian folk, Christian rock?
I do have a live album, or I did. I might have given this one away. Live at Budokan, however you say that.
Budokan?
Sorry, Japanese folks out there. A lot of the style that he was playing with at that point sounded like Ride Across the River. And it didn't work. It like just wasn't working the way Dire Straits does it,
Yeah. Huh.
But go ahead, Shane.
I was just going to say, for those interested in checking out Mark Knopfler's like more folky kinds of stuff, highly recommend. He did a whole entire album with Emmylou Harris called All the Road Runnin'. And that song, the title song, I love. And like, if I need a song where I just need to like sit back in my car and just decompress, it just has like that kind of like, it just fills you with calm. And it's one of those kinds of like songs where you feel like you're going to sit outside and you can feel the breeze on your face and you just kind of listen to this. It's like that kind of feeling and just comes over you. And then Sailing to America, he did. And like he did that title song with James Taylor. And so like he did some interesting collaborations, and like even some of Mark Knopfler's solo stuff that is folk music, he does have a little bit of like a rock edge to some of the songs. So like there's a song called Why I Man, and that has like, it kicks up a little bit more than just like a folk song. And this is I feel like this is an interesting transition, because this is, and I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here. One of my biggest pet peeves about quote unquote rock music today is now everybody just wants to sound like they're ripped out of the 80s. Because like,
are you going to mention Tame Impala?
Huh?
Are you going to mention Tame Impala?
Well,
I do hear Dire Straits in Tame Impala. I do.
Kevin Parker really set the tone, and now everybody wants to sound like Tame Impala, and it's just like, God damn it, just make your own music. Like this Decemberist turned that way, which was so different. Mumford and Sons turned that way, which was so different. It's just like, stop chasing everybody's 80s nostalgia. I can't stand it. Like, put on 104.5 in Philly now, around Philly now, and it's just nothing but people trying to be 80s. Just like, stop it.
There's definitely a trend. There's definitely a trend going for that. And the grunge is next, guys. I mean, I'm kind of excited for that, for grunge to come back around.
You're right. You're right. It's been bubbling up again with young people, 16 to 23. You know, it's been bubbling up again. I've heard that. You know, but I don't think it's hit the mainstream again. But some of those, they're starting. You know, I think some of the Soundgarden members got together with the bass player from Nirvana. They're doing a super group now with like an amazing friggin' singer, female singer. So you're right. Like, it is gonna, I don't think it's not gonna be what it was. Just like what this isn't what it was, you know, but it'll be something unto it.
I'm going to quote the band that I'm going to see on Sunday. You cannot kill the metal. While all this crap's going on, I even continue to just listen to metal music, at least, because that's still metal music.
Right.
Because I'm seeing Tenacious D on Sunday.
That would have been my first guess. Just your inflection would put Jack Black in my head.
Which, that's the thing, because, like, it is true. Like, they went hard 80s on this album. And this definitely isn't my favorite Dire Straits album, because, like, I'm even just going back through and, like, through their discography, and, like, Love Over Gold, the song Telegraph Road, which is like 14 minutes, chef's kiss. I love that song so much. But
is that off the third album, Shane?
It's Love Over Gold, and then that's from 82. It's Making Movies. It's not Moving Pictures. See, I could have done it. It's not the same exact name. Because that album has my favorite song of theirs, probably Tunnel of Love. I love that song. Romeo and Juliet, Skate Away. There's some really good songs from that album. Communique came out in 79, and that has Once Upon a Time in the West. That's a cool song. Communique, it's their, I guess that was their fourth album that Telegraph Road's on, because they have their self-entitled album Dire Straits, and that's where Sultans of Swing is, which is interesting. That was the first track on this B-side.
Wow.
On which B-side?
Their self-entitled debut album.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't the first pick for the single?
Good. I mean, good for them, though, for moving away from the tried and true formula. Like, yes, this is what we now think of as 80s, but like, there was no template in 85 for what was or was not 80s, you know? So as I feel like I say all the time,
realize, like,
yes,
we need to kill this hair metal thing. And the grunge is going to do it.
Yeah.
Could we do a deep dive into a track if you guys are willing? Mm-hmm. Your latest trick. I'm full of questions about this song, but I don't know if you guys have the answers or not.
Shoot, I guess.
So, is this song about hitting up a hooker? About frequenting a prostitute? Is that what this song is about?
I did not think about that. Which makes
me
think here Leonard Cohen even more.
Does Leonard Cohen often mention working girls in his music?
He's definitely had like metaphors with prostitutes, you know, in like some of the songs I've heard from like his later stuff, like in the 2000s. You know, yeah.
I do feel like Mark Knopfler
on this.
he's definitely, he thinks of himself as a blue collar guy, at least, right? Like, I don't know if he, after this album, I don't know if you can call him a blue collar guy anymore, because he was probably super wealthy, right? But like, I'll just read. Okay, so I like the first verse is, all the late night bargains have been struck between the satin bows and their bells. Prehistoric garbage trucks have the city to themselves. And then he goes on about dinosaurs and monsters, transitions into cash. And he says, all I can do is hand it to you and your latest trick. That phrase confuses me. Like, if he was handing her cash, wouldn't he be the trick? So he's handing the money back to himself? I don't get that phrase at all.
Well, I guess
the landlord paid us all. I don't understand that either. Like, there's a lot of stuff. He's in the band, maybe. I don't know. So that was the first thing I thought of. But of course, there's probably another explanation, right?
Well, I know at least talks like there's that one line. It's just like echoes, roars, dinosaurs. They're all doing the monster mash. And most of the taxis, most of the whores are only taking calls for cash.
For cash, right, exactly.
And it's so interesting reading these lyrics and just imagining like that saxophone going on.
Oh man, so much saxophone and trumpet in this song, I think, right? Mm-hmm. Very, very cinematic though. I get that he's like, even the titles of all these songs would make great movie titles, but like, Lethal Weapon's a great example. The saxophone, the Eric Clapton guitar. Mm-hmm. When was Lethal Weapon made? 87? Do you guys know off the top of your head?
Wow.
Was
it after this or before? I feel like it was after this.
I think you're right. It's definitely
87.
Not 87. Oh, wow.
Because it's 87, 89, 92, and then 98. And then 2023.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
I didn't know about this. They're doing another one? No way. I had no idea.
Straight to YouTube.
Well, no. Actually, it was going to go straight to HBO Max. I don't know if it's going to happen now because all the Warner Brothers crap going on. But Richard Donner's supposed to direct it. Then he passed away. Oh. And then Mel Gibson was going to direct it.
Oh boy!
And then he got in trouble. And
Warner Brothers got in trouble, and now I don't know if the movie's going to happen.
Oh man,
I feel like
that's still a good watch. Lethal Weapon 1 and 2 for me, still solid.
That was Donner, right? Donner
I love.
He's a good action director. He did some good shit. Yeah, it's true.
I'm trying to see because I feel like your latest trick. And I don't know if this is true or not, was connected to a movie, but I can't find any evidence of it.
Maybe it was supposed to be. When I hear a saxophone like that, I don't think like headphones on in my room. I think of a movie or a TV show, like from my childhood. That particular sound of that saxophone is connected in my head to the television.
Interesting. There's a review of this that says your latest trick is the 10th greatest song from Dire Straits. It stirs up the humid, smoky atmosphere of a Latino cantina at midnight. Interesting.
Maybe. I mean, minus the Latino part, but I get it. It is very atmospheric, that one, your latest trick.
We are three Caucasians with a podcast. We better dive deep into this Latino cantina.
You mean a Scottish pub? Because that's the vibe I'm getting. Because that's the vibe that they have.
Maybe.
So, all right, when I hear the saxophone, man, I think of that lady who had a talk show in the 80s and 90s. What was her name?
Ricky Lake.
Ricky Lake or Sally Jesse Raphael is the one I think of. I think of I'm sorry, Shane. I just think of the TV shows like that my grandma used to watch. You know, there's something like, it's just that instrumentation It's the board.
Well, because like this song is like jazzy. Like this isn't like E Street Band throwing like a saxophone in there. It's a very different kind of vibe. They went full blown, like we're going jazzy with this song. Yeah. And I appreciate that because like you could tell Mark Knopfler has a taste for a variety of different music.
It definitely runs the gamut. It definitely goes all, yeah.
And you could tell, like, I get why he's probably was friends with Sting because, like, you know, the Police tried out different kinds of things. They had like a bit of reggae in some of their songs, which, fun fact, I'm reading this book and basically it's a bunch of famous musicians talking about the 10 albums that like most influenced them. And they had Stuart Copeland from the Police, and one of his was one of the Wailers albums. And I'm like, that makes so much sense.
Totally. Absolutely.
All I can think is Spinal Tap is like, sounds very raga.
Shane, I have to ask, what's your pick? Like, what song from this record like has the most like sticks, you know, like has the most meaning for you?
Oh, definitely Money for Nothing.
Okay.
Like this was so. I feel like this is one of their most truest to Dire Straits songs on the album. I know there's a lot of like 80s kind of trappings to the song, but still at the core of it, you still have that Mark Knopfler just going off with his guitar, big riff. And I just feel like I find it so funny. Like it's very, like you said, Jim, it's very obvious he's trying to, there's tongue in cheek. They're being satirical about like what they're talking about here. And it's very interesting because what's so interesting to me about it is because they became such big MTV fans. This song critiquing MTV became one of the biggest songs on MTV.
Of course.
And they're not like it. Like if you look at them, they're not like an MTV band. Mark Knopfler wore like headbands and like they look like cowboy shirts and stuff like that on stage, and has like a mullet and a headband and stuff like that, and just didn't really fit. Like even the clothes they wear in the music video don't fit them. And I know a lot of people love music videos. Generally, I don't. I'd prefer just to watch a band play the song. Sure. And that's why I love the music video for Sultans of Swing, because it's literally them on a stage just playing the song. And, you know, they're wearing like jeans and just like cloth button up with the sleeves rolled up and stuff like that. They're a very blue collar kind of looking band. And it's so interesting juxtaposition of seeing them decked out in this crazy 80s getup doing this song in the music video. And the song has like this facade of being super 80s, but it's still at the core of it just him ripping through with that strong guitar riff and everything, and then making fun of it at the same time.
If they weren't good songs, I don't think we'd be talking about one of the best-selling albums of the 1980s, right? Like there are good songs under there for sure. And like he definitely, well, I don't know how much Mark Knopfler accepted help from the other bandmates writing the music, but like I just keep saying he, just for lack of a better pronoun, right? He deserves credit for taking a risk. Like this is not like their previous work. And he hit the ball out of the park, so to speak, with this one. Obviously, people really connected to it.
Is there an elephant in Utah?
Zoom, come on. What's going on with that silencing system here?
That sounded, dude, it straight up sounded like an elephant.
It's just the guy practicing the trumpet down the street. You know.
Are you on your way to the Temple of Doom?
I'm trying to, because like I follow Mark Knopfler on Instagram, and like he still pops up on a lot of things, like talking about music and like, what a picture. Him, Phil Collins, and Sting.
Wow.
Oh man.
And yes, that's Mark Knopfler with the obnoxious red headband on.
Yeah, I dig it. Yeah, he had his own style.
And that's the
thing. I wonder.
Like,
I don't know. Was he like lampooning the workout girls, like the sexy workout ladies with the headbands and the leotards and the leg warmers?
The practical use for the headband was that he just sweated so much into his face.
Wow.
Like he needed to wear something on stage.
That's believable, actually. That makes sense.
So like he was up there working hard. Had a practical reason why he wore those headbands and stuff like that. But I think I love their music, and I think this album takes a lot of bold choices in terms of shaking things up, trying different things. And I really think this is like, because when I listened to their last album, I don't think it was particularly memorable. And I feel like he kind of wanted to branch out and try out different things. And he's been doing that ever since. And I guess like, I feel like he was probably somebody who felt pigeonholed into just like rock music. And he wanted to branch out from it. And you could tell that on this album, trying out the jazzy kinds of songs. And like, yeah, Why Worry? Definitely a lullaby. Like, it feels like it's trying to rock you to sleep. And in like this nice, warm embrace. And, you know, some of their songs you could have a lot of fun with. I love Tunnel of Love because that has such a great pace to it, has a high energy to it. But like, I think one of the reasons why I wanted to pick this is because I love Dire Straits, and I don't think enough people talk about them. So, but we did.
I think there's a lot about them that people just don't straight up just don't know, you know, and I certainly didn't, you know, so, but I definitely am interested in the folk stuff, especially the Emmylou Harris collaboration. I'm definitely check that out.
So will I. Emmylou Harris, James Taylor, both big names for me. Yeah, I would definitely listen to those other songs.
Taylor. I don't like James Taylor.
I thought you were going to say screw James. I was like, I'm right here, man.
I call you Jim.
Oh, Jim. Yeah, right.
You're the man known as Jim.
Deep tracks, guys, before we cut it. Deep tracks.
I'm sorry. I don't hate James Taylor, just for the record.
He just wants to clarify
your own opinion.
Yes, I don't. I was just being funny, man. I think it's funny to say that you hate people when you don't, isn't it?
What if you say you hate songs and you really don't? Like Love After Love, for example. Like a certain Cher song from the...
Oh, that's fuck that song. I'm saying that song is that is a terrible song. It's not
Smash. I would pick Ride Across the River. I think that's the song that I like the most out of, like, they're not like big singles and releases off of this album.
I second that. Just the instrumentation, where it takes you, you know.
That's the one with the reggae sound to it, yeah?
It's got the African drums, and it starts with that pan flute sort of sound.
This album, yeah, it definitely is polished. It's made for Walkmans, which is also makes the track Money for Nothing kind of ironic, because like those were huge sellers, right? But it seems apparent to me that this album was mastered for, you know, sticking it into your ears.
100%. The vocals, I can't hear his lyrics quite as well just through the car speakers, and I got it turned up, you know. So it's almost like they're a little cloud. Like they're just a little soft in the mix. I put my headphones in, and you could say that about a lot of stuff, but some of the stuff that came out in the late 90s, early 2000s, like it's mastered, or even the stuff they did in the 80s, like the stuff that Bon Jovi did in the 80s. You can hear everything, Journey, you can hear everything, but this definitely sounded better and fuller in the headphones. Agreed. I don't know why.
I feel like maybe Patrick Bateman should have had it on, like, going to work.
Definitely.
I've always been a fan of Brothers in Arms by Dire Straits. Their earlier stuff was a little bit too blue collar for me, and I don't think I really got it. But with this album, they really embraced the new wave feel to things, and it really appreciated.
You really could just take Huey Lewis out of that and stick Dire Straits right in there, couldn't you?
Huey Lewis in the news.
Add the news.
Willem Dafoe, the way he delivers that, Huey Lewis in the news.
Side note, I love how they did that scene 3 different times. And basically that scene where he comes to Bateman's office, they did that 3 separate times. And 1, he knew he was the killer. 2, he suspected. And 3, he had no idea. And they just intercutted all those different shots to make such... That's why Willem Dafoe's so erratic in the scene.
Interesting.
Because there are 3 different performances edited together.
That's nuts. I didn't know that. That's crazy.
I didn't know that either.
I haven't seen that, but I know you guys did that, and I wasn't there for that. But
you weren't there for that one.
I wasn't.
You'll be there for us to talk about some Mel Brooks and some Nazis. Okay. To be or not to be.
I will try it. I'll try out some Nazis.
But do either of you have any last minute comments on Dire Straits, Brothers in Arms?
I'm going to leave it at Patrick Bateman, I think.
Patrick Bateman would indeed be a fan of Brothers in Arms.
For sure.
Except he would probably find Money for Nothing very literal and relate to it.
Yeah.
As many people did, I guess. Maybe.
That's the thing. I have some concerns that some people might read that song as their thoughts specifically. And I think the song's a dangerous game a bit.
Yeah.
Because you're not quite sure if people are gonna be able to read it for what it really is versus what they just on the surface perceive from it.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's one, especially when he gets to the second verse. Like, it was like, ooh, shit. Is that him? Does he mean that? Is that coming from him? And it's like, okay, no, it's coming from the worker in the warehouse, right? Like it's
that different divide between that aid. I feel like it's interesting because I feel like it's like the society really embracing that 80s culture and stuff like that versus a blue collar person who's probably stuck in the 60s, 70s kind of grittier, I live life kind of thing versus 80s feeling very artificial.
Yeah. Well, that's how I feel about social media.
It's true. I don't own a microwave or a color television, so I guess they still are kind of superficial things. I was thinking most people have those things in their house. Like everybody has a microwave and a color TV, right? But I don't. So I guess I did hear the song in a little bit of a different light.
Jim,
considering
you're too much of a nut bar to own a microwave.
Maybe I would if I could actually power it. I just don't have the capacity.
You don't have. Oh yeah, well, true, exactly.
Don't have the power.
But
I don't even know what that's from.
This was a fun conversation. And Alex, do you have any last thoughts?
So that might have been from Ace Ventura. Pet Detective, by the way, when he's in the pool and he's imitating Captain Kirk. That may have well very been, I can't do it, Captain. I don't have the power.
Nice way to bring it back around to Scotland. Well done.
Yeah. Or not Captain, whoever the other guy was in Star Trek. I don't know. You help me, Shane.
Well, yeah, because that's Scotty, and he was on the Enterprise with Captain Kirk. So, because me being a terrible Star Trek fan, I know Simon Pegg is Scotty. I'm giving it all to Scott, Captain. And Simon Pegg just doing a Scottish accent to Chris Pine's Captain Kirk.
Despite my efforts, I'm not a big Star Trek fan either. I've watched the first couple of movies, Wrath of Khan and everything. Couldn't get into it. Couldn't do it. Like, okay, all right, cool. Feels like it should have been a better movie. I don't know why. It just feels like it should have been better. But that's just me.
So you watched Star Trek: The Motionless Picture?
The Motionless. Yes, I did. I actually like that one better than the second one, but it was all
okay. Quentin Tarantino.
Great
him and his hot takes on Indiana Jones.
Great nerds think alike.
Correct.
But we have yet to decide what we're going to do next time. We got to discuss that after we stop recording. So we'll keep you all in suspense about that. But I hope everybody who had no idea about Dire Straits and decided to listen to this episode actually goes check out some of their music, including some of Mark Knopfler's solo stuff, especially some of that folk music. Definitely recommend All the Road Running. Great song, great album.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
But Alex and Jim, thank you so much for coming on, as always, to talk some music, shake things up on here.
Yeah.
And thank all of you for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.